Good evening once again, cadets. This is Lance from CinematicGalaxy returning to give you guys, as promised, my review of Rebel Rising, a Star Wars novel written by Beth Revis. This book came out around the beginning of May, and it follows the character of Jyn Erso, who is played by Felicity Jones, the main character of Rogue One. It follows her story. Well, actually, before I give you that information, this review will not contain spoilers. So it will not contain spoilers for Rebel Rising. It will contain spoilers possibly for Rogue One. So if you've not seen Rogue One, for whatever reason you haven't seen Rogue One by now, chances are you probably don't care enough about spoilers anyway, but if you still want to see the movie, get away from this review. Rogue One probably will be spoiled. Rebel Rising will not be spoiled. So you've been warned. But anyway, Rebel Rising follows Jyn Erso from when Saw Gerrera rescues her as an 8-year-old girl up to when she is Felicity Jones in the film. And yeah, it really gives you a big chunk of Jyn's life, her adolescence, leading up to her young adulthood. And just to preface this, any of you guys who know me from the Collider Jedi Council fan page on Facebook, I'm an admin on there. And those of you who don't, I'm just letting you know right now, I'm a huge Jyn Erso fan, a huge Rogue One fan, first of all, but a huge fan of Jyn Erso, bigger fan of Felicity Jones, love her as an actress and as a person, and Jyn Erso is my favorite Star Wars character. In fact, I just got this shirt right here that I'm wearing right now, so yes, I'm a huge fan of Jyn Erso. I love the character. And it's one of those things, some people think she's a weak character, that there wasn't enough development or anything, but then, you know, some like myself really loved her character. I think a lot of people did love her character in Rogue One. There was definitely a lot that was left mysterious about her, a lot that was not revealed, but I thought that Felicity's performance gave the character a lot of gravity and made her feel very real, to the point where I could look at her as a person and feel that she had been through some devastating things that made her the way she was in the film. Well, Rebel Rising confirms that my suspicions were correct. My hunch was correct. Yes, there is a lot that has gone on in Jyn's life, and this book gives her story, you know, it pretty much gives her entire story after Catalyst, but leading up to Rogue One. And so anyway, to get into my main thoughts, my main opinion on the book, I absolutely loved it. I may not be the most reliable source in the sense that I'm a massive Jyn fan, but I'm a big Luke Skywalker fan, and I didn't love Heir to the Jedi all that much. So I think my opinion is still pretty objective and pretty unbiased here. I thought this was a fantastic read. I thought it was a great book. Beth Revis knows how to write. In all honesty, she might be my favorite new Star Wars author aside from Claudia Gray in canon. Right from the beginning, she hooked me, got me invested, made me feel the emotion, took me right back to the Rogue One's prologue, and she never let up after that. And that is the thing I think this book does so well, is the emotion, the stakes, the desperation, the dire tone. Very similar to Catalyst, very similar to Rogue One. Beth Revis crafts this story that fits right into that world, and I think she does so very well. Her writing is always engaging, it's interesting. There's a part maybe towards the middle of the book that you could say it slows down. For some people, it was not as interesting. But for myself, that was one of the best portions of the book, because I think it offered Jyn Erso some of the best character development that she's ever gotten, you know, in that portion of the book. But it's really a constant thing. You see her go from being 8 years old to being 21 as she is in Rogue One. She doesn't live to be older than 21, obviously. Very short life, but just a lot to cover within her formative years. Um, the best thing about Rebel Rising, I would say, is how it develops the relationship between Jyn Erso and Saw Gerrera, who is her surrogate father figure after Galen Erso is taken away from her. And there's definitely some tenderness there, but there's also several indicators that this is not exactly a healthy parent-child relationship. And you definitely see that. And all I can say is it adds so much more context to that, what I thought was a wonderfully acted scene between Felicity Jones and Forrest Whitaker in Rogue One when they see each other again. It adds so much more context to that scene, and you see what their characters are talking about when Jyn says, "You left me, I was 16. You see that in this book, and it's awesome to finally know what she's talking about in detail. So this book feels essential. Even though Rogue One, I think, holds up on its own, I still feel like you should read this book because it gives you so much more understanding of what these characters have been through together. And there are other new characters that are introduced. I don't want to divulge much because that'll be getting into spoiler territory. There's really not a whole lot you can talk about with this book that doesn't give away spoilers, but I would actually say Rebel Rising, do not let the young adult label fool you. This is labeled young adult like Lost Stars and Ahsoka. And honestly, the only thing young adult about Rebel Rising is that Jyn Erso is a young adult. But this might be the darkest canon novel I've read to date. It's grisly. It gives you detail. It does not let up in regards to that. By no means is this pandering to children or young people at all. This is not a book I would let a very young child read. In fact, it gets dark, it gets deep. And again, to commend Beth Revis, it gets into the psyche of Jyn Erso. It gets into her psychology. And you really see every aspect about her. You see her innocence that grows into jadedness, into hope, into anger, into sadness, into fear, into rage. I mean, you see it all. And Jyn Erso is why I think Jyn Erso is a great character. It's why I think she's a multifaceted character. This book really gets down to the crux of that. And I think it's an engaging story. What I will say is do not expect space battles. Do not expect lightsaber battles at all. Do not expect anything like that because that's not what this book is. But do expect a character study, a kind of wartime book that if you've read Catalyst or Rogue One story by James Luceno, this is the sequel to that essentially. And then Rogue One, the film or the novel by Alexander Freed, is the sequel to Rebel Rising. Without further ado, don't want this to go on too long. Honestly, I'm trying to think of flaws with this book. There's really nothing that stands out to me that I can name. I give Rebel Rising a 10 out of 10. It's my favorite Star Wars book, and there are things I could maybe argue are flaws, but there's really nothing there that I can take away where I say this book didn't do what it needed to do. It did. You can argue Lost Stars is a better book, and Lost Stars definitely gives you more of that pure Star Wars action. There are thrilling action pieces in action set pieces in Rebel Rising. Don't get me wrong. Lost Stars, though, is definitely more flashy in that regard. But for me, Rebel Rising is one of the best Star Wars books out there. And if you love Jyn Erso like myself, you'll definitely love the book, probably. If you maybe didn't love her in the film, I think you might have a greater appreciation for the character after reading it. So definitely give this book a shot. And let me know down below if you plan on reading Rebel Rising or not. If you have read it, no spoilers in the comments, but what did you think of it? As always, thanks for watching, guys, and this is Lance from Cinematic Galaxy, signing off.